Have you ever pondered what would cause a father to stand by grinning while his wife humiliates their daughter in front of others at her wedding? In front of 350 distinguished guests, my stepmother purposely spilled a full glass of red wine all over my $15,000 wedding gown while laughing and saying, "Oops, now you match your mother's fate." The red streaks resembled blood as they spread across the white silk, and my father actually laughed. However, Victoria was unaware that she had just caused the total destruction of everything she had taken from me. Their laughter would turn into terror when the venue manager spoke 5 words into the microphone. The empire they believed they ruled was already mine, and the secret my late mother had kept hidden for 8 years was about to come out. The tale of how my wedding day turned into the most catastrophic public reversal in Boston high society history is told by Willow Drake, who is 28. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. To understand what happened that October afternoon at the Grand Plaza Hotel, you need to know about the Drake family empire. My father, Richard Drake, built Drake Construction from a small contractor business into a $45 million corporation with over 200 employees. For 15 years, he's been the king of Boston's construction industry, with connections reaching into every boardroom and country club in the city. My mother died when I was 20, 8 years ago now. She'd been the heart of our family, the one who kept Dad grounded. But just 2 years after cancer took her, Victoria entered our lives. Where Mom had been warm and genuine, Victoria was all sharp edges and designer labels. She moved through Boston society like a shark through water, always hunting for the next status symbol to devour. And me, I became invisible. Despite my architecture degree from MIT and my position at a small firm earning $85,000 a year, in my father's eyes, I was just another low-level employee who needed constant correction. Every Friday dinner at their Beacon Hill mansion reminded me of my place in the new family hierarchy. Victoria spent $50,000 a month on her shopping sprees. I'd seen the credit card statements she carelessly left around. Meanwhile, she'd make cutting remarks about my dresses and Target shoes. "Willow, dear," she'd say, examining her new $35,000 bag. "You're a Drake. Shouldn't you dress like one?" The worst part, my father would nod along. "You should learn from Victoria about presenting yourself, sweetheart. Image matters in our world." In their world, never mind. I was the ghost at their feast, the reminder of a past Richard wanted to forget. Those Friday dinners were exercises in endurance. 3 weeks before my wedding, I sat at their imported Italian marble table, pushing salmon around my plate, while Victoria held court about her latest triumph. A charity gala where she'd outbid the mayor's wife for a Tiffany necklace. $28,000, she announced, touching the diamonds at her throat. "Was absolutely green. You should have seen her face when I raised my paddle." Richard beamed at her. "That's my girl. Show them what the Drakes are made of." I stayed silent as always. But that night, Victoria turned her attention to me. "Willow, darling, what are you wearing to the benefit next month? Please tell me it's not another one of those." She waved vaguely at my dress, a simple black sheath I'd thought looked professional. "Office outfits." "I wasn't planning to attend," I said quietly. "Not attend," Richard's fork clattered against his plate. "It's the social event of the season. Every major developer will be there." "I have a project deadline." "This is exactly your problem." Victoria interrupted, her voice dripping false concern. "You hide behind your little drawings while real business happens at these events. No wonder you're still stuck at that no-name firm." "Associates is respected." "By whom? I've never heard anyone mention them at the club." She turned to Richard. "Honestly, darling, sometimes I wonder if Willow even wants to be part of this family's success." Richard's jaw tightened. "Your mother would be disappointed, Willow. She understood the importance of connections." The cruelty of invoking Mom's memory to support Victoria's agenda made my stomach turn. But I just nodded, swallowed my anger, and counted the minutes until I could leave. Why did I keep coming back? That's what I asked myself every Friday night. The final humiliation came 2 weeks later. Drake Construction had landed a $120 million hotel project in Back Bay, the biggest in company history. I'd spent over 200 hours creating a design proposal on my own time, incorporating sustainable architecture with classic Boston aesthetics. It was my chance to prove my worth beyond my last name. The board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday at 2 p.m. I arrived early, my portfolio and presentation materials perfectly prepared. But when I entered the conference room, Victoria was already there chatting with the board members like old friends. "Oh, Willow," she said, barely glancing at me. "I'm afraid there's been a change. We've decided to go with International's design team instead." But the board was supposed to review my proposal. "Sweetie, this is a real project, not a school assignment." She smiled at the board members who shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sure your little sketches are lovely, but has experience with luxury properties. You understand, don't you? You design such nice middle-income housing." I looked at my father, who sat at the head of the table, studying his phone. "Dad." He didn't even look up. "Victoria's right. This project needs proven expertise." I stood there holding 200 hours of work, watching Victoria toss my unopened portfolio into the waste basket beside her chair. "Meeting starts in 5 minutes, she announced. "I assume you have actual work to do at your, what's it called?" That night, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop to find an unexpected email from marked Confidential, Drake Estate. My hands shook as I read the subject line. "Regarding your inheritance, urgent timeline." Everything was about to change. Can you believe it? A father who lets his wife trash his daughter's work without even looking at it. But wait, you haven't heard about the secret my mother kept for 8 years. If you want to know how Victoria and Richard finally paid for their cruelty, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Trust me, the justice coming their way is more satisfying than you can imagine. That same evening, came over with Chinese takeout and found me staring at email. Wasn't just my boyfriend of 3 years. He was a mergers and acquisitions lawyer who'd seen enough corporate family dramas to recognize one brewing. "Let me guess," he said, setting down the food. "Another Friday dinner disaster." Worse, they threw out my Back Bay proposal without even opening it. I showed him the email, and now this. Read it carefully, his expression growing serious. "Willow, this is from an associates. They don't handle simple estates. Whatever your mother left you, it's significant." He was right about more than the law firm. Over the past year, had been gently pushing me to distance myself from my toxic family. He'd even suggested we move to New York, where his firm had offered him a senior position. "We could start fresh," he said, taking my hand. "No more Friday dinners, no more Victoria, no more watching your father choose her over you." "I can't leave, not yet." "Why not?" I looked at the email again. "Because there's something unfinished, something about Mom's estate that Dad never told me." Studied my face. "You know something, don't you?" "I've always wondered why Mom's life insurance was only $100,000. She was meticulous about planning. And why did Dad remarry so quickly? Why does Victoria act like she owns everything when she signed a prenup?" "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe Mom knew exactly who my father was, and maybe she protected me in ways I'm just beginning to understand." Squeezed my hand. "Then we stay and we find out what your mother really left you. But Willow, promise me once this is resolved, we build our own life." "I promise." 3 days later, I received an unexpected call from Thomas Grant, Drake Construction CFO. Thomas had worked with my mother years ago when she helped establish the company's financial structure. "Willow, can you meet me at Cafe Nero? Not the office, come alone." When I arrived, Thomas looked exhausted. He slid a manila folder across the table with shaking hands. "I've been carrying this guilt for 3 years," he began. Your mother was my mentor. She taught me everything about corporate finance, and I've watched Victoria destroy what built. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, invoices, and transaction records spanning 3 years. My breath caught as I saw the patterns. Payments to 5 companies I'd never heard of. Evergreen Consulting, Lux Marketing Solutions, Infinity Design Group, Meridian Supplies, and Zenith Management. They're shell companies, Thomas explained, all registered to Victoria's associates. Look at the amounts. The numbers were staggering. $240,000 here, $380,000 there. Dozens of transactions totaling. I had to calculate twice to believe it. $8.7 million, Thomas confirmed. In 3 years, how did she? Your father signs whatever she puts in front of him. He's so infatuated he doesn't even read them. But Willow, that's not just company money. Half of that came from accounts your mother established. Funds meant for employee pensions and your education trust. My hands clenched. She stole from Mom's legacy. I have copies of everything. Ernst & Young could verify this independently if needed, but I'm taking a huge risk telling you this. Why now? Thomas met my eyes. Because called me yesterday. She said you're about to learn something that changes everything, and when you do, you'll need this evidence. The pieces were falling into place, but I still couldn't see the whole picture. His law office occupied the entire 40th floor of the Prudential Tower. When I walked in the next morning, her assistant immediately escorted me to a conference room where waited with a thick legal folder. Willow, thank you for coming. Please sit down. What I'm about to tell you will be shocking. She opened the folder, revealing documents bearing my mother's signature and multiple official seals. 8 years ago, 2 months before she passed, your mother restructured her estate. She owned 52% of Drake Construction, shares from when she helped your father start the company. These shares were never transferred to Richard. They were placed in a trust for you. My world tilted. 52%. But Dad always said, your father has been lying. The shares became yours on your 21st birthday 7 years ago. However, there's a crucial provision. You must formally claim them before your 29th birthday, or Richard gains the right to buy them back at 1990 prices, essentially stealing them for pennies. My 29th birthday is in 3 months. Exactly. Your mother suspected Richard might remarry quickly and try to hide this from you. She was right. Pulled out another document. I've kept the original will along with 5 notarized copies for 8 years as requested. She said, when Willow needs this, she'll know. So I've been the majority owner for 7 years. Every board meeting without you was technically illegal. Every major decision required your approval. Richard has been operating on borrowed time. I thought of all the humiliations, the dismissals, the times they'd laughed at my little job while spending money that was partially mine. Can we claim the shares without warning them? She smiled. Your mother asked the same question. The answer is yes, but timing is everything. When do you want to strike? At my wedding. That Friday dinner, I waited until dessert was served. Victoria's favorite moment to hold court, before making my announcement. And I have set a date, October 15th, 2 months from now. Victoria's spoon clattered against her. 2 months, that's impossible. The plaza needs at least 6 months. Then isn't it fortunate you have such impressive connections? I smiled sweetly. Unless you've been exaggerating your influence. Richard looked up from his phone. This is rather sudden, Willow. Got promoted. We want to celebrate properly. Besides, I turned to Victoria. You're always saying I don't understand how to make a statement. Here's my chance to learn. Victoria's eyes gleamed. I'd baited the hook perfectly. Well, she said slowly, I suppose I could call in some favors. The Grand Plaza has the best ballroom in Boston, but it won't be cheap. At least $400,000 for the kind of wedding befitting the Drake name. Perfect. And we'll need to invite all the board members, Dad's business partners, the investors from the Back Bay project. Everyone important. Everyone, Richard frowned. That's at least 350 people. It's also the end of Q3, I added casually. The quarterly board meeting is October 14th. The timing would let everyone attend both events. Victoria practically glowed. Oh, this is perfect. I'll handle everything. We'll show Boston society what real elegance looks like. His daughter's wedding will look like a backyard barbecue compared to this. How generous of you, I said. I'm sure you'll make it unforgettable. If only she knew how unforgettable it would truly be. October 15th would be the day the Drake Empire changed hands, and Victoria would be the architect of her own destruction. Victoria threw herself into wedding planning with the fervor of a general preparing for war. Within a week, she'd commandeered my entire wedding, and I let her. This is perfect, she announced at the bridal salon, selecting a $15,000 gown without asking my opinion. The beading will photograph beautifully in the Globe Society pages. She booked the Boston Symphony Orchestra for $50,000. The flowers, all white orchids and roses, cost another $30,000. The menu tasting at the Grand Plaza ran $1,200 per person for Wagyu beef and lobster thermidor. We're not just planning a wedding, Victoria declared to her assistant. We're creating the social event of the season. I want every person who rejected my country club application to see this. That revealed everything. 3 years ago, the Brooklyn Country Club had quietly declined Victoria's membership. She'd been trying to buy her way into old Boston society. Ever since, watched her spiral into excess. With amusement, she's spending at least $450,000. He calculated. Does she think this will finally get her accepted? She thinks my wedding is her coronation. I replied, let her. The guest list grew daily. Victoria invited every CEO, every society matron, every gossip columnist in Boston. She even arranged for a Boston Business Journal photographer to cover the event. Your little friends from that firm can sit in the back, she informed me while reviewing seating charts. We need the important people visible in photos. I nodded obediently, hiding my satisfaction, as she unknowingly assembled the perfect audience. For her own downfall, every person she was desperate to impress would witness her humiliation. You're being surprisingly cooperative, she observed suspiciously. You're right, Victoria. It's time I learned how to be a proper Drake. Her smile was venomous. Finally, while Victoria orchestrated her grand production, and I quietly built our financial fortress, his expertise in corporate law proved invaluable, as we established 3 offshore LLCs through completely legal channels. We need to protect your personal assets before you claim the shares, explained, fingers flying over his laptop. Once you become majority owner, Richard might try to sue for control. Over 2 weeks, we moved $15 million from my mother's trust accounts. That had helped me access money Richard didn't even know existed. The funds went through the islands, then Switzerland, finally landing in secure accounts he couldn't touch. Thomas Grant met us secretly at his office one evening, bringing corporate banking authorization codes. As CFO, I can freeze Drake Construction's accounts for audit purposes for up to 72 hours. He explained. But the timing has to be perfect. October 15th, 3:30 p.m. I said, right after Victoria's grand entrance. Right before the reception payment. Thomas nodded. The company credit cards will decline. Richard's personal cards are all linked to the corporate accounts. For tax purposes, they'll fail too. What about employee payroll? Protected in a separate account. I'm not letting innocent people suffer for their greed. Pulled up the calendar. The quarterly board meeting is October 14th. 7 of 9, board members already confirmed. They're attending the wedding. Perfect, I said. We'll serve the papers. Right after the venue manager makes his announcement. Thomas stood to leave, then paused. Your mother would be proud, Willow. She always said you had her strategic mind. But your own kind heart. Kind, I laughed bitterly. I'm about to destroy them publicly. No, corrected. You're letting them destroy themselves. There's a difference. He was right. I wasn't creating their crimes. Just revealing them. Invited me to her office. To review the original will. Seeing my mother's handwriting after 8 years. Made my chest tight with grief and anger. Came to me in January. 2 months before she passed. Explained. She knew the cancer was winning. But she was more concerned about you than her illness. The will was comprehensive. 20 pages detailing the share distribution. My mother had owned 52% of Drake Construction. Since its incorporation. Having invested her entire inheritance from her parents. To help Dad start the company. Look at this clause. Pointed to a highlighted section. The shares were placed in an irrevocable trust. Richard couldn't sell, transfer, or dilute them. Even if he wanted to. Your mother made sure of that. But he's been acting as sole owner for 8 years. Fraudulently. Every major contract, every loan, every acquisition. Required majority shareholder approval. You could void them all if you wanted. The documents bore the seal. Of 3 different notaries. The Massachusetts Secretary of State. And an associate's. My mother had made it bulletproof. There are 5 copies, continued. 1 here, 1 in my bank's vault. 1 with the state, 1 with Ernst & Young. And 1 your mother said she hid. Where Richard would never look. Where? In her recipe box in the kitchen. Inside her mother's apple pie recipe. I almost laughed. Richard hadn't cooked a meal in 20 years. Your mother was brilliant, said. She knew Richard would remarry quickly. He can't function alone. She knew he'd hide this from you. So she built in safeguards. Like the age deadline. Exactly. She figured by 29, you'd be strong enough to fight back. Mom had been playing chess, while everyone else played checkers. Even dying, she'd protected me. I hired Ernst and Young's forensic accounting team. Through's firm. To avoid any connection to me personally. The lead auditor, Jennifer, had a reputation for finding money others wanted hidden. This is extraordinary, she said after 2 weeks of investigation. Your stepmother created an entire ecosystem of fraud. The evidence was damning. 47 fraudulent transactions over 36 months. Each carefully structured to stay just under the $500,000 threshold that required special board approval. Victoria's signature appeared on every single one. Look at this email chain. Jennifer showed me her laptop screen. She corresponds with all 5 shell companies. From her personal email. She didn't even try to hide it properly. The shell companies all traced back to Victoria's college roommate in Delaware, a woman named Henley, who had been paid $50,000 to register them. The invoices were for services never rendered, consulting that never happened, marketing campaigns that didn't exist, supplies never delivered. The most egregious part, Jennifer pulled up another document. She's been billing Drake Construction $75,000 monthly for interior design services for the office. The office hasn't been redecorated in 5 years. Can you prove Richard knew? He signed the checks. But look, she showed me signature comparisons. Half of these signatures are forgeries. Not even good ones. She's been signing his name. That's wire fraud, federal crime. Exactly. The FBI would be very interested in this. I had Jennifer prepare 5 copies of the full report. ready to distribute at the wedding. Each one contained enough evidence to destroy Victoria 10 times over. "When do you want to release this?" Jennifer asked. "October 15th. Email it to every board member, the Boston Business Journal, and the FBI. At exactly 3:45 p.m. That's specific. That's when everyone will be watching." 3 weeks before the wedding, I started receiving unexpected support. It began with Robert, Drake Construction's longest-serving board member, approaching me at a coffee shop. "Willow, I knew your mother well. She was the real brains behind Drake's success." He slid a business card across the table. "When you're ready to make changes, you'll have my vote. What makes you think I'm planning anything?" "Victoria's spending patterns. Richard's negligence. Your sudden interest in a massive wedding. Your mother raised a strategist." Within days, 2 more board members reached out. Blackwood called me directly. "That woman has been bleeding the company dry. We've been waiting for someone with standing to act." David Smith, the board member, was more direct. "I've seen the shell companies. I hired my own investigator 6 months ago. But without a majority shareholder, we're powerless. How many votes do I have?" 7 of 9. If you really have shares. Richard and Victoria can't vote on their own termination. The Boston Business Journal's senior reporter, Michael Torres, contacted me through. "I've been tracking Drake Construction's irregularities for 2 years. If you're planning something, I want exclusive access." "You'll get more than that," I promised. "Just be at my wedding with a photographer." Even James, the Grand Plaza's manager, pulled me aside during a venue visit. "Ms. Drake, I've dealt with your stepmother before. If there are any payment issues on your wedding day, please know I'll handle them professionally." "There might be complications," I admitted carefully. He smiled. "I've managed society events for 30 years. I've seen every kind of family drama. Just give me a signal if you need me to make an announcement." The army was assembling. Victoria had no idea she was surrounded. Can you imagine? 8 years of deception, 8.7 million stolen, and a wedding about to become the stay. For perfect justice, what do you think Victoria's face will look like when she realizes she just planned her own downfall? Comment below with your predictions. And don't forget to like this video if you want to see karma in action. The wedding day revelation is coming up next. October 15th arrived with perfect autumn weather. The Grand Plaza's ballroom had been transformed into Victoria's vision of paradise. 10,000 white roses, crystal chandeliers, gold-leafed everything. It had cost a fortune, and she wanted everyone to know it. By 2:00 p.m., the guest list read like a Forbes directory. 50 CEOs, 30 major investors, 15 society reporters, and every important family in Boston. Victoria had even managed to get the lieutenant governor to attend. Victoria herself wore a $25,000 suit, diamonds dripping from her ears and neck. She moved through the crowd like royalty, making sure everyone noticed her. "This is just a preview," I heard her tell. "Wait until you see the reception. The Boston Symphony, a 10-course meal, champagne flown in from France. Nothing but the best for the Drake family." Richard stood beside her, shaking hands and accepting congratulations, as if he'd planned everything himself. His custom tuxedo probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Your stepmother has outdone herself," Judge Harrison commented to me. "This must have cost a fortune." "About $450,000, I replied casually. "She insisted on the best." His eyebrows rose. "That's substantial." The photographer from the Boston Business Journal was already snapping pictures. Michael Tors had positioned himself perfectly to capture both the grandeur and what was coming next. Thomas Grant caught my eye from across the room and subtly tapped his watch. Everything was in place. The corporate accounts would freeze in exactly 1 hour. Squeezed my hand. "You look beautiful," he whispered, and remarkably calm for someone about to detonate a bomb. "It's not a bomb," I corrected. "It's justice. And it's been 8 years in the making." The wedding march began. Time for Act 1 of Victoria's final performance. The ceremony went perfectly, and I exchanged vows, while Victoria preened in the front row, making sure the photographers captured her, dabbing at fake tears. By 3:15 p.m., we were taking family photos near the fountain. "Smile, everyone," the photographer called. One more with just the bride and her parents. Victoria stepped forward eagerly, holding a glass of red wine she'd grabbed from a passing server. Richard stood on my other side, already checking his phone. "Oh, Willow," Victoria said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "You look so much like your mother today. It's almost haunting." She moved closer, ostensibly to adjust my veil. Then, with a movement that looked accidental, but was absolutely deliberate, she tipped her entire glass of Cabernet Sauvignon down the front of my $15,000 dress. The wine spread like blood across the white silk and beading. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Phones appeared instantly, recording everything. "Oops," Victoria laughed, not even trying to hide her satisfaction. "Now you match your mother's fate. She died looking just as pathetic. The cruelty of it. Invoking my dead mother while destroying my wedding dress. Should have broken me." Instead, I stood perfectly still for 10 long seconds, staring directly into Victoria's triumphant face, while 350 people watched in horrified silence. Richard actually chuckled. "Accidents happen, sweetheart. Victoria, help her clean up." "Oh no," Victoria said, still smiling. "I think the stain adds character. Besides, we need to start the reception. Can't keep the Boston Symphony waiting." I finally spoke, my voice carrying clearly. "Thank you, Victoria. You just made this so much easier." Her smile faltered slightly. "Made what easier?" "You'll see in about 10 minutes. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. Instead, I stood there in my ruined dress, wine still dripping onto the marble floor, and smiled. "Ladies and," I announced to the stunned crowd, "please proceed to the ballroom. We have an important announcement. Before dinner service begins." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "What announcement? I didn't approve any." "You're right, Victoria. You didn't." I turned to James, who had been waiting for my signal. He nodded and headed toward the ballroom sound system. Appeared at my side with my reception dress, a simple but elegant backup I'd hidden in the manager's office. 3 minutes, he whispered. Thomas just confirmed the freeze went through. While I changed in a side room, I could hear the crowd buzzing with speculation. Victoria's voice rose above the rest. "I don't know what she's planning, but I won't have her ruining this reception." Was already in position near the stage, her briefcase in hand. The Boston Business Journal photographer had switched to video mode. 7 board members had strategically placed themselves around the room. When I returned in my clean dress, Victoria was at the microphone, trying to regain control. "Everyone, please be seated. The champagne service will begin." James approached the mic, his face professionally neutral. "Excuse me, Mrs. Drake. There's an urgent matter requiring Mr. Drake's attention." "Not now," Richard snapped. "We're about to toast." "I'm afraid it can't wait, sir." James's voice carried perfectly through the sound system. "It regards the payment for today's event." The room fell silent. Victoria's face went white. "What about the payment?" Richard demanded. James looked directly at him. "Sir, the card was declined." The silence was deafening. 350 of Boston's elite stood frozen, champagne glasses half raised, as James repeated those 5 devastating words. "Sir, the card was declined." Richard's face went from confused to furious in seconds. "That's impossible. Run it again." "We've tried 3 times, Mr. Drake. The corporate American Express, the Visa, and your personal black card all declined." Victoria snatched the microphone. "This is obviously a mistake. Richard, call the bank immediately." "I'm trying." Richard fumbled with his phone, his hands shaking. "It says the accounts are frozen for audit." Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Phones appeared, not for photos, but for frantic texting. Several investors were already making calls. "How much is the balance?" someone called out. James consulted his tablet. $450,000, due immediately per the contract Mrs. Drake signed. Stage whispered to her husband, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Didn't Victoria say they were worth $45 million? "This is sabotage," Victoria shrieked, abandoning all pretense of composure. "Someone did this deliberately." "You're right," I said, stepping forward. "Someone did." Every head turned to me. I stood calm in my simple reception dress, while Victoria trembled in her $25,000 suit. "Thomas," I called out, "could you explain why the accounts are frozen?" Thomas Grant stood up from table 3. "As CFO, I initiated an emergency audit after discovering significant discrepancies. We're investigating $8.7 million in suspicious transactions." The crowd gasped. Richard dropped his phone. "But don't worry," I continued, "is here to explain everything." The room watched as Boston's most prestigious estate lawyer walked to the microphone, briefcase in hand. Commanded attention the moment she reached the microphone. In Boston legal circles, her presence meant serious business. "Good afternoon. I'm here as executor of Drake's estate," her voice clear and authoritative. "I have an announcement that should have been made 7 years ago." Richard shot up from his chair. "What the hell is this? The state was settled years ago." "Sit down, Richard," said coldly, "unless you'd like me to add obstruction to fraud." Victoria turned to security. "Remove her. She's disrupting the wedding." The security guards didn't move. They knew his reputation. More importantly, I'd briefed them an hour ago. "I have here," lifted a document from her briefcase, "Drake's last will and testament, properly executed 2 months before her death. A will that Richard Drake deliberately concealed from his daughter and this company's board." The crowd was riveted. Michael Torres from the Business Journal was recording everything. According to this document, Willow Drake inherited 52% of Drake Construction shares held in trust until her 21st birthday. That was 7 years ago. Board member Robert stood up. "Are you saying Willow has been the majority shareholder for 7 years?" "Exactly. Every board meeting held without her was illegal. Every major decision required her approval." Richard's face had gone from red to white. "This is fake. I never saw any will." "That's interesting," said, pulling out another document, "because I have your signature on this receipt acknowledging you received a copy 8 years ago." She held it up. Even from across the room, Richard's signature was visible. "You committed fraud, Richard. You stole your daughter's inheritance and lied to everyone in this room." Continued reading from the will, each word a nail in Richard and Victoria's coffin. "To my beloved daughter, Willow Drake, I leave 52% of Drake Construction, representing my initial investment and sweat equity in building this company from nothing." The room erupted. CEOs were calling their lawyers. Investors were calculating losses. Victoria stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "This can't be legal," she finally screamed. "I'm Richard's wife. I have rights." "Actually," smiled, You signed a prenuptial agreement excluding you from any claim to Drake Construction assets. I have a copy here if you'd like to review it. I stood up, my voice steady and clear. For 7 years, I've been the majority owner of Drake Construction. Every board meeting you held without me was invalid. Every bonus you paid yourselves needs to be returned. Robert and 6 other board members stood up. We recognize Willow Drake as majority shareholder, Robert announced. We call for an immediate board meeting. You can't do this, Richard shouted. I built this company. With Mom's money, I corrected. Her inheritance funded everything. You were just the face while she was the brains. Thomas Grant pulled out his laptop. I've prepared a full audit. In addition to the frozen accounts, we've discovered Victoria embezzled $8.7 million through shell companies. Jennifer from Ernst and Young stood up from table 7. I can confirm this. We've documented 47 fraudulent transactions. The FBI has been. Victoria's legs gave out. She collapsed into a chair as the full scope of her exposure hit her. Every single person in this room is a witness, I said. You're finished. I walked to the microphone, passing Victoria, who sat stunned in her chair. The entire room watched as I took control. As majority shareholder of Drake Construction, I authorized the freeze of all corporate accounts at 3:30 p.m. today, pending a full investigation. The audit revealed massive fraud perpetrated by Victoria Drake. I nodded to Jennifer, who connected her laptop to the projection screen. Suddenly, the evidence was displayed for everyone to see. Invoices, bank transfers, email chains. Evergreen Consulting, Lux Marketing, Infinity Design Group, all shell companies registered to Victoria's associate, Henley. $8.7 million stolen over 3 years. The crowd gasped at each revealed transaction. Several people were taking photos of the screen. That's private information, Victoria shrieked. You can't show that. Actually, as majority shareholder, I can. And the FBI will be very interested in these offshore accounts in the Victoria. Richard finally found his voice. You planned this. You let us organize this whole wedding. You organized it, I corrected. You spent $450,000. You didn't have to impress people who now know exactly what you are. Michael Torres raised his hand. Ms. Drake, are you pressing charges? That depends on their cooperation. Victoria has 72 hours to return the stolen funds. Richard has 24 hours to resign as CEO. This is extortion, Richard bellowed. Laughed. No, Richard. Extortion is hiding your daughter's inheritance while living off her money. This is justice. The Boston Business Journal photographer captured Richard's devastated face perfectly. By tomorrow morning, everyone in Massachusetts would know the truth about the Drake family scandal. Now, I said calmly, shall we continue with the reception? Don't worry about the bill, I'll be paying with my own money. Victoria's desperation was painful to watch. She lurched toward, trying to grab the will from her hands. This is fake. It has to be fake. She actually tried to tear the document, but simply held up another copy. I have 5 notarized copies, Victoria. Would you like to try destroying them all? Victoria spun towards the crowd, mascara running down her cheeks. You all know me. I've donated to your charities. I've attended your galas. This is just a jealous stepdaughter trying to... Trying to what? Interrupted. Reclaim what was legally hers. We all just saw the evidence. Victoria, Richard made me do it. Victoria suddenly pointed at her husband. He signed everything. He knew about the shell companies. Richard's jaw dropped. You lying witch. You told me they were legitimate vendors. They turned on each other instantly, years of fake devotion evaporating in seconds. You were happy to spend the money, Victoria screamed at him. You forged my signature. You knew your daughter owned majority shares, and you hid it. The crowd watched like it was dinner theater. Someone actually started eating their salad. Victoria made one last desperate play. She pulled out her phone and tried to call her lawyer. Bradley, Bradley, I need you at the Grand Plaza immediately. Her face crumpled. Why isn't he answering? Because I hired his firm yesterday, said smoothly. Conflict of interest. He can't represent you anymore. That was the final blow. Victoria stood there, designer suit wrinkled, makeup destroyed, her entire carefully constructed world in ruins. Please, she whispered to me, please don't do this. You did this to yourself, I replied. I just revealed it. Robert took charge with the authority of someone who'd been waiting for this moment. I call an emergency meeting of Drake Construction's board of directors. 7 of 9 members are present, constituting a quorum. You can't hold a board meeting at a wedding, Richard protested. We can hold it anywhere with proper quorum, David Smith corrected. Willow, as majority shareholder, do you call this meeting to order? I do. Blackwood stood. I motion to remove Richard Drake as CEO effective immediately for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. Seconded, said 3 board members simultaneously. All in favor. 7 hands rose. Richard and Victoria couldn't vote on their own termination. Motion carried, Robert announced. Richard Drake, you're terminated as CEO of Drake Construction. The corporate lawyer who'd been invited as a guest was already documenting everything on his phone. This is legally binding, he confirmed. I'll file the papers Monday morning. I further motion, continued, to appoint Thomas Grant as interim CEO while we search for a permanent replacement. Seconded, all in favor. Another unanimous vote. Thomas stood, looking stunned but resolute. I accept, and my first act is to confirm the forensic audit findings. Victoria Drake will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law unless full restitution is made within 72 hours. I built this company, Richard roared one last time. No, I said firmly. Mom built it, you just took credit and now you're done. Security finally moved, not to remove, but to escort Richard and Victoria toward the exit. Wait, I called out, you're forgetting something. They turned. The bill, $450,000 due now. Had the settlement documents ready. She'd drawn them up days ago, anticipating this moment. Victoria, you have 2 choices. Sign this agreement to return the $8.7 million within 72 hours, or face federal charges for wire fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Victoria's hands shook as she read the document. I don't have that much liquid cash. Then you'll need to liquidate assets. The Beacon Hill house, your jewelry collection, the cars, everything. Richard, do something. Richard laughed bitterly. With what? You heard them. I'm unemployed as of 5 minutes ago. Turn to Richard. Your agreement is different. Resign all claims to Drake Construction. Accept a 75% reduction in your pension to compensate for damages, and agree to never use the Drake name in any future business ventures. That's everything. You're leaving me with nothing. You'll have $100,000 a year pension, Thomas corrected. That's more than most people make, though significantly less than the $400,000 you were expecting. If you don't sign, I added, we'll pursue criminal charges for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. The choice is yours. They had no choice. With 350 witnesses and documented evidence, they were trapped. Victoria signed first, tears destroying the last of her makeup. Richard followed, his signature shaky with rage. One more thing, said. A restraining order. You're not to contact Willow without her explicit permission. They signed that too. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you. And Victoria, that $50,000 monthly shopping allowance. It's over forever. As security escorted them out, started slow clapping. Soon, the entire room was applauding. Justice served at exactly the right temperature. With Richard and Victoria gone, the atmosphere transformed completely. I stood at the microphone, looking out at 350 faces that had just witnessed the most dramatic wedding in Boston history. Ladies, and the wedding reception will continue as planned. The Boston Symphony is here. The food is exceptional, and the champagne is already chilled. The only difference, I'm paying for it with my own money, money that was always rightfully mine. The crowd erupted in genuine applause this time. Join me at the altar. We'd set up for our reception ceremony. Should we do this properly now? At 4:00 p.m., we exchanged rings again, this time surrounded by people who actually respected us. No fake tears from Victoria, no dismissive glances from Richard, just honest witnesses to our love. Before we celebrated, I announced, I want to make something clear. Drake Construction will be run ethically from now on. The stolen pension funds will be restored. The 50 employees Victoria fired to cut costs will be offered their jobs back. More applause. Several investors approached Thomas immediately to express their support. And one more thing. I pulled out my phone and transferred $50,000 on the spot. This is going to the Boston Women's Architecture Foundation in memory of Drake. Judge Harrison raised his champagne glass. To justice. To justice, 350 voices echoed. The Boston Symphony began playing, and for the first time in 8 years, I felt like I could truly breathe. Spun me onto the dance floor and I laughed, really laughed. No regrets, he asked. None, Mom would be proud. She would. You didn't just reclaim your inheritance, you reclaimed your life. The party continued until midnight, becoming legendary as the wedding where justice was served as the main course. By 6:00 a.m. the next morning, the story had exploded across Boston media. Michael Tors had worked through the night to publish his exclusive in the Boston Business Journal's online edition. The headline read, Drake heiress reclaims empire, wedding day coup exposes years of fraud. Read it aloud over breakfast. In a stunning reversal witnessed by 350 of Boston's business elite, Willow Drake revealed she has been the rightful majority owner of Drake Construction for 7 years, while her father and stepmother perpetrated massive fraud. The article included photos, Victoria's shocked face when the card declined, Richard's rage during the board vote, and me, calm in my simple reception dress, taking control of my company. By noon, the story had been shared 50,000 times. Boston wedding justice was trending. Financial reporters from and the Wall Street Journal were calling for interviews. Drake Construction's stock price, stagnant under Richard's management, jumped 12% on news of Thomas Grant's appointment as CEO. Look at this, showed me his phone. 5 major construction firms had already reached out to Thomas about partnerships, excited by the promise of ethical leadership. Victoria's social media accounts were being destroyed in the comments. Her Instagram following dropped from 100,000 to 3,000 in a single day. Someone had even created a meme of her wine-spilling moment with the caption, "When karma has perfect timing." The 5 shell companies were under federal investigation by that afternoon. Henley had already agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for immunity. You've changed corporate Boston, Michael Tors told me in a follow-up interview. Good, I replied. No one should have to wait 8 years for justice. Victoria's fall from grace was swift and complete. Within 72 hours, she'd liquidated everything to pay back the $8.7 million. The Beacon Hill penthouse sold for $3.2 million. Her jewelry collection, those precious status symbols she'd flaunted, fetched another $2.8 million at auction. The cars went next. The Mercedes, the Range Rover, then the art, the furs, the designer wardrobe. She had to sell it all. Delighted in telling everyone at the country club, she's living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Worcester now, working as a real estate agent for a small firm. Can you imagine? But the worst blow came from an unexpected source. Victoria's first ex-husband, whom she'd divorced 15 years ago, saw the news coverage and filed a lawsuit. Apparently, she'd hidden assets during their divorce, too. She claimed poverty to avoid alimony, his lawyer told the press. Now we know she had millions hidden offshore. Even then, her Instagram account, once filled with luxury vacations and designer hauls, went dark. The last post before deletion was flooded with comments from former friends distancing themselves. The country clubs she'd fought so hard to join all revoked her memberships. The charity boards she'd sat on quietly requested her resignation. The society events she'd lived for, her name was mysteriously absent from every guest list. Thomas shared a report 3 months later. She applied for a job here. Can you believe it? Wanted to be our interior design consultant. What did you do? Sent a polite rejection from your desk. I heard she eventually moved to Arizona, starting over where no one knew the name Victoria Drake. Sometimes disgrace is its own prison. Richard's downfall was different from Victoria's, quieter, but somehow sadder. Without the CEO title that had defined him for 15 years, he seemed to shrink. The Beacon Hill mansion had to be sold to cover his debts and the company's legal settlements. He moved into a modest condo in Quincy, a far cry from the luxury he'd grown accustomed to. His $400,000 annual pension was reduced to $100,000. Still generous, but not enough to maintain his former lifestyle. The country club membership, the box seats at Fenway, the yacht, all gone. I saw him at Whole Foods, Uncle told me 6 months later. He was checking prices, Richard Drake checking grocery prices. No company would hire him. His reputation was toxic. Who would trust a CEO who defrauded his own daughter and allowed his wife to embezzle millions? The divorce from Victoria was finalized in 3 months. She tried to claim spousal support, but the prenup she'd signed was ironclad. They tore each other apart in court, each blaming the other for their downfall. She seduced me when I was grieving, Richard told the judge. He knew exactly what I was doing and encouraged it, Victoria countered. The judge was unmoved by either of them. A year later, Richard sent me a single text. Your mother would be proud. I didn't respond. Some bridges once burned should stay ash. Heard Richard had started drinking heavily, spending his days in a dive bar in Quincy, telling anyone who'd listen how he'd built an empire and been betrayed. The king of Boston construction had become a cautionary tale told in business schools about the dangers of greed and the importance of ethical leadership. Under Thomas Grant's leadership, Drake Construction didn't just recover, it thrived. Within the first year, he increased profits by 30% simply by eliminating Victoria's fraudulent vendors and Richard's vanity projects. Your mother would love this, Thomas told me during our quarterly review. We're building with integrity again. The 50 employees Victoria had fired were offered their positions back with full benefits and retroactive pension contributions. 43 returned, grateful for second chances. The Back Bay Hotel project that Victoria had rejected my design for, the client specifically requested we use my plans after reading about the company's transformation. It became Drake Construction's most profitable project, coming in under budget and ahead of schedule. Company value rose from $45 million to $65 million in 18 months. Our stock price went from $45 to $67 per share. Investors who'd been wary under Richard's leadership were now eager to partner with us. You saved this company, Robert told me at the annual board meeting. Not just financially, but morally. I served as board chair, but didn't interfere with daily operations. Thomas had proven himself capable, and I had my own dreams to pursue. We established the Drake Memorial Fund within the company. 5% of annual profits went to scholarships for women in architecture and construction. The first year, we funded 20 full scholarships to MIT and Northeastern. Employee satisfaction scores reached record highs. Turnover dropped to nearly zero. The Boston Business Journal named us most improved company and best place to work in the same year. We're not just building structures, Thomas said at the company meeting. We're building trust. That's Drake's true legacy. The portrait of my mother was restored to its place in the main lobby. Under it, a new plaque, founder and visionary. 6 months after the wedding, Richard reached out through Uncle. He wanted to meet, to talk, to maybe salvage something from the wreckage. I agreed to coffee once a month in public with present. The first meeting was awkward. Richard looked older, grayer, diminished. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before: regret. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, staring at his black coffee. "I know what I did was unforgivable." "Then why are we here?" "Because you're still my daughter, and I want to know you. The real you, not the one I ignored for 8 years." We established rules. No discussing money, no talking about Drake construction, no mention of Victoria, just conversation. Slowly, very slowly, we built something new. Not the father-daughter relationship that had been destroyed, but something else. 2 adults who shared DNA and were learning to coexist. Uncle started joining us. Then my cousins from Maine, Mom's family who'd been pushed away by Richard's pride. They welcomed me back with open arms and years of stored love. "Would be so proud," Aunt Susan told me, holding me tight. "You're just like her, strong, smart, and kind even to those who don't deserve it." The family expanded in better ways, too. Parents, who'd been hesitant about our relationship due to the family drama, now embraced me fully. His mother started calling me monthly just to chat. "Family isn't just blood," reminded me one evening. "It's the people who show up for you." He was right. My real family included Thomas, the loyal employees at Drake Construction, and the friends who'd supported me through everything. Richard remained on the periphery, earning trust in drops after losing it in buckets. And I moved into a beautiful brownstone in Back Bay, not far from where I'd grown up, but worlds away from that life. We decorated it ourselves. No interior designer charging phantom fees, just our taste and love making a home. Made partner at his firm within the year, specializing in corporate fraud cases. "You inspired a career pivot," he joked. "Turns out I'm good at catching white-collar criminals." I opened my own architecture studio, Drake Design, focusing on sustainable housing and women's shelters. The work filled my soul in ways corporate projects never could. We designed spaces that gave people dignity and hope. A year after the wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. Cried when I told him, then immediately started planning renovations for a nursery. "Our daughter will never doubt her worth," he promised, hand on my growing belly. "She'll know she's loved, valued, and powerful from day one." We named her after my mother. She had eyes and my determination, evident from her first fierce cry. I reduced my work to 4 days a week, refusing to repeat my father's mistakes. Success meant nothing if you missed your child's first steps, first words, first day of school. "You smile more now," observed one Sunday morning as I played within our garden. "Real smiles, not the polite ones you used to wear like armor." He was right. The weight I'd carried for 8 years was gone. I could breathe, laugh, love without reservation. Our home filled with friends for dinner parties, colleagues for brainstorming sessions, family for holidays. It was warm, genuine, alive. Everything the Drake mansion had never been. This was wealth that couldn't be embezzled. Love, trust, and peace. 3 years after the wedding, I spoke at MIT's graduation ceremony. Standing where my mother once stood, I shared what I'd learned about worth and power. "I spent 28 years dimming my light so others wouldn't feel dark," I told the graduating class. "I accepted crumbs of respect from people who were eating at a table my mother built." The auditorium was silent. Hundreds of young faces focused on mine. "Your worth is not negotiable. It's not determined by your family's opinion, your boss's recognition, or society's approval. It exists independently, powerfully, absolutely." I talked about the danger of silence, how being peaceful had been misconstrued as being weak. Preparation beats confrontation every time. While they were laughing at me, I was documenting everything. Silence isn't submission. Sometimes it's strategy. The speech went viral, shared by women who'd been diminished, overlooked, underestimated. Messages poured in from around the world, daughters dealing with toxic parents, employees facing workplace theft, people finding courage in my story. I started therapy after the wedding, working through childhood trauma with Dr. Martinez. "You were," she explained, After your mother died, you felt responsible for keeping peace, even at your own expense. The healing wasn't linear. Some days I still heard Victoria's voice calling my work little sketches. Some nights I dreamed of my father choosing her over me again. But each morning I chose myself. I chose to build instead of tear down, to create rather than destroy, to love despite having been betrayed. The best revenge isn't revenge at all, I told a reporter. It's building a life so beautiful, so authentic that their opinion becomes irrelevant. My worth had never needed their validation. It just took me 28 years to realize it. The Drake Foundation launched on what would have been my mother's 60th birthday, $2 million annually for women in architecture, with special focus on daughters of single mothers who understood the struggle of building something from nothing. The first scholarship recipient, Maria Santos, cried when she received the news. My mom cleans houses to pay rent. Now I can study architecture without drowning her in debt. 50 scholarships in the first year. Each recipient received not just money, but mentorship, internships at Drake Construction, and a network of support my mother would have loved to provide. We restored Mom's portrait to the Drake Construction lobby, but also commissioned a new one for the foundation offices. In it, she's smiling, holding blueprints, looking toward a horizon full of possibility. She protected you even from the grave, said at the foundation launch. That's a mother's love, strategic, fierce, eternal. I found more of her protection over the years. Notes hidden in books Richard never read, investment accounts he never knew existed, even letters to me sealed and waiting its office to be opened on specific birthdays. The letter for my 30th birthday read, "My darling Willow, if you're reading this, you've survived whatever storm Richard brought into your life. You are stronger than you know, smarter than they assumed, and worthy of every dream you hold. Build something beautiful. Love, Mom." Her vision finally materialized, not just in buildings, but in lives changed. Every scholarship recipient, every ethical decision at Drake Construction, every boundary I set was part of her legacy. "Your mother's playing chess from beyond," observed after another strategic document surfaced. She knew exactly who Richard was and planned accordingly. Drake, architect, mother, and the longest game strategic player Boston never saw coming. If you're watching this and living in a toxic family situation, here's what I learned the hard way. Document everything, every cruel comment, every financial discrepancy, every broken promise. Keep copies in multiple places, cloud storage, safety deposit boxes with trusted friends. Evidence is your armor when gaslighting is their weapon. Get your own lawyer. Never use the family attorney who might have divided loyalties. Pay for independent advice, even if it strains your budget. Saved my life because she worked for my mother, not my father. Financial independence is ultimate freedom. Open accounts they don't know about. Build credit in your name alone. Even small amounts saved secretly can become escape funds. Victoria controlled through money. When I took that away, she had nothing. Don't announce plans, announce results. I let them plan my wedding while planning their downfall. Strategic silence is powerful. Let them underestimate you while you prepare. Forgiveness doesn't mean no boundaries. I meet Richard monthly, but he'll never have access to my home, my daughter, or my finances. You can forgive someone and still protect yourself from them. Trust your instincts about people. If someone makes you feel small, they're showing you who they are. Believe them. Don't spend years hoping they'll change. Build your chosen family. The people who supported me during the revelation, Thomas, they're my real family. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. Finally, remember this. The best revenge is a life well lived, but justice helps too. You don't have to be the bigger person while they're stealing from you. You can be strategic, patient, and devastating when necessary. Your worth exists independently of their recognition. You just have to claim it. 3 years later, I stand in my office overlooking Boston Harbor, watching play with building blocks. She'll never question her worth or beg for scraps of approval. The cycle ends with her. Drake Construction thrives ethically under Thomas's leadership. The foundation has funded 150 scholarships. My architecture firm just won a national award for sustainable design. Victoria disappeared completely from Boston society. I heard she moved to Phoenix, selling real estate to retirees who do Google their agents. Richard lives quietly in Quincy. Our monthly coffees are the highlight of his shrinking world. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. Then I remember the wine dripping down my wedding dress, my mother's portrait hidden in storage, 8 years of stolen inheritance. No, I wasn't harsh. I was precise. Any regrets? Asks, finding me in quiet moments. None, I answer honestly. I didn't ruin my wedding, I reclaimed my life. The October sun sets over Boston, painting the sky the color of possibility. Somewhere my mother is smiling. She knew I'd find my way to this moment. Powerful, free, and finally home. Justice served, boundaries set, life reclaimed. This is what winning looks like. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're trapped in a toxic family situation, remember, you deserve respect. Document everything, build your independence, and never let anyone make you feel small in your own life. Subscribe for more stories about justice and courage. Comment below. Where are you watching from, and what did you think of Victoria's downfall? See you in the next one.